The cold winter wind cut through the streets of Mumbai like a sharp knife. The city was alive with noise, with cars honking, people shouting, and street vendors calling out their prices. But in a quiet corner near the famous Gateway of India, a woman sat on a torn piece of cardboard. Her name was Meera, though nobody in the city knew it. To everyone who passed by, she was just another beggar, another forgotten face in the crowd of millions. Meera was 32 years old, but she looked much older. Her hair was tangled and dirty, her clothes were nothing more than rags, and her feet were bare and cracked from walking on hot roads and cold nights. She held a small steel bowl in her hands, and sometimes people would drop a coin or two into it. Most of the time, they walked past her without even looking. She had become invisible to the world, but there was something different about Meera, something that nobody could see just by looking at her. Hidden inside her chest, behind all the pain and hunger, was a gift. A gift so powerful that it could make angels weep and stars shine brighter. Meera had a voice. Not just any voice, but a voice that came once in 100 years. A voice that could touch the deepest parts of a human soul. She had not always been a beggar. There was a time when Meera lived in a small village in Rajasthan. Her father was a farmer, and her mother worked in other people's homes to make extra money. They were poor, but they were happy. And from the moment Meera was born, everyone in the village knew she was special. When she cried as a baby, her cries sounded like music. When she laughed, it felt like bells ringing in a temple. By the time she was 5 years old, Meera could sing songs that made grown men cry. Her mother would take her to religious gatherings, and the priests would ask little Meera to sing devotional songs. People came from nearby villages just to hear her voice. They said God himself had blessed her throat. They said she was born to become a great singer, a star who would light up the world, but life had other plans for Meera. When she was 12 years old, a terrible drought hit her village. The crops died, the wells dried up, and the animals started dying one by one. Her father, broken by the failure of his farm, fell into a deep sadness. He stopped eating, stopped talking, and one morning Meera found him lying still in his bed. He had died in his sleep, his heart giving up from too much sorrow. Her mother tried to hold the family together, but without her husband she had no strength left. She worked day and night, cleaning houses and washing clothes until her body could take no more. She fell sick with a fever that no medicine could cure. Within a year of her father's death, Meera's mother was also gone. At 13 years old, Meera was completely alone in the world. The village that had once loved her singing now turned its back on her. Without parents, without money, without a home, Meera became a burden that nobody wanted to carry. Her relatives took her in for a few months, but they treated her like a servant. They made her work all day and gave her only leftover food to eat. They beat her when she made mistakes and locked her in a dark room when she cried. One night, when Meera could take no more, she ran away. She had no plan, no destination, no idea what she would do. She only knew that she had to escape. She walked for days, sleeping under trees and begging for food. Sometimes kind people gave her a piece of bread or a cup of water. Most times she went hungry. But she kept walking, kept moving, kept surviving. Eventually Meera found herself in Mumbai. The city was nothing like her village. It was loud, crowded, and overwhelming. There were so many people, so many buildings, so many cars. Meera felt like a tiny ant in a world made for giants. She had no skills, no education, no connections. The only thing she had was her voice. But in a city where everyone was too busy to listen, her voice meant nothing. For the next 15 years, Meera lived on the streets. She learned how to survive, how to find food in garbage bins, how to sleep in doorways without being chased away, how to become invisible so that people would not bother her. She stopped singing. Her voice, once so full of life and joy, went silent. What was the point of singing when there was no one to hear? What was the point of music when her stomach was empty and her heart was broken? But even though Meera stopped using her voice, it never left her. Sometimes, late at night, when the city finally went quiet, she would hum softly to herself. She would sing the songs her mother had taught her, the songs of love and loss, of hope and heartbreak. And in those moments, something magical would happen. The stray dogs that slept near her would lift their heads and listen. The birds in nearby trees would stop chirping as if they too wanted to hear. Even the wind seemed to slow down and pay attention. On this particular winter evening, Mira sat in her usual spot near the gateway of India. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Tourists walked by, taking photos and laughing. Local families strolled along the waterfront, enjoying the cool breeze. Street vendors sold their snacks and souvenirs. And in the middle of all this activity, a large group was setting up a stage. Mira watched with tired eyes as workers carried speakers and lights. A big banner was hung above the stage announcing a singing competition. The words read, "Voice of Mumbai, find your star." Apparently this was a talent show where anyone could come and sing, and the winner would get a chance to record a song with a famous music company. Judges from the music industry would be there to watch. Mira read the banner slowly, her lips moving as she formed each word. She had not gone to school for long, but her mother had taught her to read before she died. A strange feeling stirred in Mira's chest as she looked at that stage. It was a feeling she had not felt in many years. It was hope. It was longing. It was the tiny voice inside her that still remembered what it felt like to sing for people who wanted to listen. She shook her head and looked away. What was she thinking? She was a beggar. She had not sung properly in 15 years. Her throat was dry from thirst and weak from silence. And even if she could sing, who would let her on that stage? Who would listen to a dirty, homeless woman when there were young, beautiful, talented people waiting to perform? Mira told herself to forget about the competition. She told herself that dreams were for people who had homes, who had families, who had futures. She was none of those things. She was just a beggar sitting on a piece of cardboard, waiting for the night to come so she could sleep and forget about her hunger. But as the hours passed, and the stage became more and more complete, Mira could not take her eyes off it. Something was pulling her toward that stage. Something was telling her that maybe, just maybe, this was her chance. This was the moment she had been waiting for all her life. When darkness finally fell and the workers went home, Mira lay down on her cardboard bed and closed her eyes. But she did not sleep. She lay there staring at the stars, thinking about the competition, thinking about her voice, thinking about everything she had lost and everything she had given up. And somewhere deep inside her a small flame began to flicker. A flame that had been dying for 15 years. A flame called hope. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and the crowd around the stage grew larger. Hundreds of people had come to watch the Voice of Mumbai competition. Television cameras were set up at different angles, ready to broadcast the event live across the country. Newspaper reporters moved through the crowd, looking for interesting stories to write about. This was one of the biggest talent shows in the city, and everyone wanted to be part of it. Backstage, the contestants waited nervously for their turn. They practiced their scales, adjusted their outfits, and checked their makeup in small mirrors. Among them, sitting alone in a corner, was Mira. She had no mirror, no makeup, and no fancy outfit. All she had was her number pinned to her torn clothes and the song. In her heart, the other contestants avoided her like she was carrying a disease. They whispered among themselves, wondering how she had been allowed to register. Some felt sorry for her, thinking she would only embarrass herself on stage. Others were annoyed that she was taking a spot that could have gone to a real singer. Nobody believed she had any chance of winning. One young woman, dressed in a beautiful blue dress with sparkling jewelry, walked over to Mira. Her name was Priya, and she was considered one of the favorites to win the competition. She had been trained by the best vocal coaches in the country and had already sung in several reality shows. She looked at Mira with a mixture of curiosity and disgust. Priya asked Mira why she was doing this to herself. She said Mira should just leave before things got embarrassing. She said the judges were professionals who had heard thousands of singers, and they would know immediately that Mira did not belong on the stage. She was trying to be kind in her own way, thinking she was saving Mira from humiliation. Mira looked up at Priya with calm eyes. She thanked her for the concern but said she had come too far to turn back now. She said she had been silent for 15 years, and this might be her only chance to use her voice again. She said even if she failed, at least she would know that she tried. At least she would not spend the rest of her life wondering what could have happened. Priya shrugged and walked away, thinking Meera was foolish. But something in Meera's eyes had made her feel uncomfortable. There was a depth in those eyes, a sadness mixed with strength, that Priya had never seen before. She tried to shake off the feeling and focus on her own performance. The competition continued, and one by one, contestants went on stage. Some received standing ovations, while others were politely clapped off. The three judges sat at a table in front of the stage, including Rika Sharma, who had helped Meera register. Next to Rika was a famous playback singer named Vikram Khanna, known for his powerful voice and strict opinions. The third judge was a young music director named Arjun Malhotra, who was known for discovering new talent. After nearly 4 hours, Meera's number was finally called. Her heart started beating so fast that she thought it might burst out of her chest. Her legs felt weak as she stood up and walked toward the stage. The backstage crew looked at her with doubt, but they stepped aside and let her pass. When Meera walked onto the stage, a wave of whispers swept through the audience. People pointed at her torn clothes and bare feet. Some laughed, others shook their heads in disbelief. The television cameras zoomed in on her and across the country. Millions of viewers saw a homeless woman standing on a professional stage. The host of the show, a well-dressed man with a perfect smile, tried to hide his surprise. He asked Meera her name and what she would be singing. Meera spoke into the microphone, and her voice sounded strange to her own ears. It had been so long since she had spoken to so many people at once. She said her name was Meera and that she would be singing a classical devotional song, a bhajan that her mother had taught her when she was a child. The judges exchanged glances. Rekha leaned forward with interest, remembering the woman she had helped earlier. Vikram looked skeptical, already preparing his criticism. Arjun seemed curious, wondering what this unusual contestant would bring to the stage. Meera closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The noise of the crowd faded away. The bright lights disappeared. In her mind, she was not standing on a stage in Mumbai. She was sitting in her small village home, next to her mother, learning the song that would become her gift and her curse. She could smell the incense burning in the corner. She could feel her mother's hand on her shoulder. She could hear her mother's voice, gentle and encouraging, telling her to sing from her soul. Meera opened her mouth and the first note came out. It was soft, almost a whisper, like the first ray of sunlight at dawn. The audience, who had been chatting and laughing, suddenly went quiet. Something in that single note made them stop everything they were doing. Something made them sit up and pay attention. The second note was stronger, building on the first like a wave building in the ocean. Meera's voice rose higher, filling the air with a sound that seemed to come from another world. It was not just singing. It was something more. It was the sound of a soul crying out, of a heart breaking and healing at the same time. Meera sang about devotion, about surrender, about finding light in the darkest moments. She sang about loss and longing, about hope and faith. Her voice climbed higher and higher, hitting notes that should have been impossible for someone who had not practiced in 15 years. Each word was perfectly pronounced, each melody perfectly controlled. But it was not the technical skill that moved people. It was the emotion behind the music. A woman in the audience started crying. Then another. Then a man wiped tears from his eyes, trying to hide his emotion from those around him. People who had laughed at Meera just minutes ago now sat in stunned silence, completely captured by her voice. The television cameras captured every moment, broadcasting this extraordinary performance to millions of homes across India. On the judges' panel, Rekha Sharma pressed her hand to her heart. She had been in the music industry for 30 years and had heard thousands of singers. But this was something different. This was the voice of a generation. This was the kind of talent that came once in 100 years. Her eyes filled with tears, and she did not try to hide them. Vikram Khanna, the strict judge who rarely showed emotion, leaned back in his chair with his mouth slightly open. He had come to this competition expecting to hear amateur singers with dreams bigger than their talents. He had not expected to witness something this powerful, this moving, this absolutely incredible. Arjun Malhotra, the young music director, was already thinking about the future. In his mind, he was already imagining the songs he could create with this voice, the albums they could produce, the concerts they could fill. This woman was not just talented. She was a diamond that had been buried in the dirt for too long. Mira continued singing, lost in her own world. She had forgotten about the crowd, the judges, the cameras. She was singing for her mother, who had first taught her this song. She was singing for her father, who had loved to hear her voice. She was singing for all the years she had spent in silence. All the nights she had cried herself to sleep. All the mornings she had woken up wondering why she was still alive. When the last note faded away, there was a moment of complete silence. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. It was as if the world itself had stopped to honor what had just happened. Then the silence broke into thunder. The entire audience jumped to their feet, clapping and cheering with a passion that Mira had never experienced. People were shouting her name, throwing flowers onto the stage, reaching toward her as if she was a goddess who had come down from heaven. The noise was so loud that Mira could feel it vibrating in her chest. She opened her eyes and looked at the crowd in disbelief. Were all these people really cheering for her? The same people who had laughed at her, who had looked at her with disgust, who had treated her like garbage. She did not understand what was happening. All she knew was that she had sung, and somehow people had listened. The host walked back onto the stage, his perfect smile now replaced with genuine amazement. He put his arm around Mira's shoulders and told the audience that they had just witnessed something extraordinary. He said he had hosted many competitions, but he had never seen a reaction like this before. He asked the judges for their comments. Rekha stood up from her chair, still wiping tears from her eyes. She said she had no words. She said she had waited her entire career to hear a voice like this. She said Mira was not just a singer. Mira was a miracle, and she was honored to be in the same room with her. The morning sun rose over Mumbai, bringing with it the usual chaos of a new day. Rickshaws honked their horns, office workers rushed to catch buses, and the smell of street food filled the air. Near the gateway of India, workers were adding final touches to the stage that had been set up the night before. Today was the day of the singing competition, and excitement was building in the area. Mira woke up early, her body stiff from sleeping on the hard ground. She stretched her arms and looked toward the stage. It was now complete with bright lights and colorful decorations. A large crowd was already gathering, and she could see young men and women in beautiful clothes practicing their songs and warming up their voices. They looked confident and polished, like they belonged in front of cameras and microphones. She looked down at herself and felt her heart sink. Her clothes were torn and stained. Her hair was a mess of knots and dirt. Her skin was dark and rough from years of living under the sun and rain. How could she possibly stand next to those shining people? How could she even think about getting on that stage? But the feeling from the night before had not gone away. That tiny flame of hope was still burning inside her chest. Mira had spent the whole night thinking about her mother, about her village, about the days when people used to gather just to hear her sing. She had spent 15 years running from her past, hiding from her pain. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to remember who she really was. Mira walked to a public tap near the beach and washed her face and hands. She tried to untangle her hair with her fingers, but it was no use. She found a piece of broken mirror on the ground and looked at her reflection. A tired, worn-out woman stared back at her. There was no trace of the little girl who had once made an entire village fall in love with her voice. She walked slowly toward the stage, staying at the edge of the crowd. People moved away from her when she got too close. Some covered their noses, disgusted by her smell. Others looked at her with pity or annoyance. A security guard spotted her and walked over with a frown on his face. The guard was a tall man with a thick mustache and a harsh expression. He looked at Mira like she was a piece of garbage that needed to be thrown away. He told her to leave immediately. He said beggars were not allowed near the event. He said she was making the area look dirty and scaring away the good people who had come to watch. Mira lowered her eyes and nodded. She was used to being treated this way. She was used to being told that she did not belong. She turned to walk away, her shoulders slumped in defeat. But just as she was about to disappear into the crowd, she heard something that made her stop. A man was speaking into a microphone on the stage. He was explaining the rules of the competition. He said that this was an open event, that anyone could participate, that talent had no age and no address. He said the judges were looking for raw talent, for voices that touched the heart, for singers who had a story to tell. He said that sometimes the greatest stars came from the most unexpected places. Mira stood frozen, listening to every word. Anyone could participate. Talent had no age and no address. The greatest stars came from unexpected places. These words echoed in her mind like a beautiful song. She turned back toward the stage and looked at the registration desk where people were signing up to sing. Her feet started moving before her brain could stop them. She walked toward the desk, ignoring the stares and whispers of the people around her. The woman behind the desk looked up and her eyes widened with surprise and disgust. She asked Mira what she wanted. Mira opened her mouth to speak, but her voice came out as a whisper. She cleared her throat and tried again. She said she wanted to sing. She said she wanted to be in the competition. The woman behind the desk laughed out loud. She called to her colleague and pointed at Mira, asking if he could believe this beggar wanted to sing. The colleague also laughed. Other people nearby heard and started laughing too. Soon a small crowd had gathered, all of them pointing at Mira and making jokes. One young man said, maybe she wanted to sing for her dinner. A woman said the competition was for real singers, not street people. Another person said Mira should go back to her corner and beg for coins instead of wasting everyone's time. The laughter grew louder and crueler, each word cutting into Mira's heart like a knife. But Mira did not move. She stood there, her head held high, her eyes fixed on the registration form. 15 years of humiliation had made her skin thick. 15 years of hunger and loneliness had taught her that the opinions of others did not matter. What mattered was whether she could still sing. What mattered was whether she still had the gift that God had given her all those years ago. A voice suddenly cut through the laughter. It was a woman's voice, calm but commanding. She asked what was happening here. The crowd parted to reveal a woman in her 50s, dressed in an expensive silk sari, with silver hair and sharp eyes. Mira recognized her immediately. Everyone in India knew this face. It was Rekha Sharma, one of the most famous music producers in the country and one of the judges of the competition. Rekha walked toward the registration desk and looked at Mira with curiosity rather than disgust. She asked Mira her name. Mira told her. Rekha asked if she really wanted to sing. Mira nodded, her eyes filling with tears that she tried hard to hold back. Rekha looked at Mira for a long moment, studying her face, her hands, her posture. Then she turned to the woman behind the desk and told her to give Mira a registration form. The crowd fell silent. The woman behind the desk protested, saying they could not let a beggar perform. Rekha's voice became cold and hard. She said the rules clearly stated that anyone could participate. She said talent did not care about clothes or addresses or how much money someone had. She said she had seen too many fake singers with fancy outfits and empty voices. She wanted to see if this woman had something real. The form was handed to Mira with shaking hands. Mira took it and tried to fill it out, but her hands were trembling so badly that she could barely hold the pen. Rekha gently took the form and helped her complete it. She asked Mira where she was from, how long she had been on the streets, and why she wanted to sing. Mira answered each question honestly, her voice growing stronger with each word. When the form was complete, Rekha handed Mira a number. It was the number she would wear when she performed on stage. Mira looked at the small piece of paper like it was made of gold. She was really going to sing. After 15 years of silence, she was going to use her voice again. Rekha told Mira to wait with the other contestants. She said the competition would start in a few hours and Mira would be called when it was her turn. She also told Mira not to worry about the people who had laughed at her. She said the only thing that mattered now was what came out of her mouth. When she opened it to sing, Mira found a spot far from the other contestants and sat down on the ground. She closed her eyes and tried to calm her racing heart. She had not sung in front of people in 15 years. Her voice had only been used to beg for money and food. What if she had lost her gift? What if the years of suffering had taken away the only thing that made her special? She began to hum softly, testing her voice. The sound that came out was rough and scratchy at first, but as she continued, something amazing started to happen. The roughness began to smooth out. The notes began to flow more easily. The melody that her mother had taught her so long ago came back to her memory. Perfect and complete, Mira sang a little louder, still keeping her eyes closed. The notes floated through the air like butterflies, light and beautiful. A few people nearby stopped what they were doing and turned to look at her. They expected to see a fancy radio or a recording playing somewhere. When they realized the sound was coming from the beggar woman in the corner, their jaws dropped open in shock. Mira opened her eyes and stopped singing. She saw the amazed faces around her and felt a warmth spreading through her chest. Her gift was still there. After all these years, after all the pain and hardship, her voice had not abandoned her. It had been waiting patiently, like a sleeping dragon, ready to wake up when the time was right. The time was now. Mira knew it in her bones. She did not know what would happen when she got on that stage. She did not know if the judges would be impressed or if the audience would accept her. But she knew one thing for certain. She was going to sing like she had never sung before. She was going to pour her entire life, all her joy and all her sorrow, into that one performance. And whatever happened after that, at least she would have tried. At least she would have remembered who she truly was. The hours passed slowly as contestant after contestant went on stage. Some were good, some were average, and some were not very talented at all. Mira watched each performance carefully, learning from their techniques and their mistakes. And deep inside, she prepared herself for the moment that would change her life forever. The applause continued for what felt like hours. Mira stood on the stage, her legs trembling, her eyes wet with tears she could no longer hold back. For 15 years, she had been invisible. For 15 years, she had been nothing more than a beggar asking for coins. And now, in the space of a single song, everything had changed. Vikram Khanna, the strict judge, was the next to speak. His voice was rough with emotion as he told Mira that he owed her an apology. He admitted that when she had walked on stage, he had already made up his mind about her. He had assumed she would be terrible. He had been ready to tell her to go home and stop wasting everyone's time. But she had proven him completely wrong. He said her voice was the purest, most powerful thing he had heard in his entire career. He said she had given him goosebumps and made him believe in miracles again. The young music director, Arjun Malhotra, could barely contain his excitement. He told Mira that he wanted to work with her immediately. He said her voice had qualities that could not be taught in any music school. He said she was a natural treasure and he would do everything in his power to share her gift with the world. He asked her where she had been hiding all this time. Mira looked at the judges with humble eyes. She spoke softly into the microphone, her voice now back to its normal speaking tone. She told them her story. She told them about her village in Rajasthan, about her parents who had died when she was young, about the years she had spent wandering from place to place until she ended up on the streets of Mumbai. She told them about the hunger, the loneliness, the days when she had wished she would simply not wake up in the morning. The audience listened in complete silence. Many of them felt ashamed of how they had treated her earlier. The same people who had laughed and mocked her now had tears streaming down their faces. They realized that they had almost missed something incredible because of their own prejudice. They had almost ignored a voice that was sent from the heavens because it came wrapped in dirty clothes and bare feet. Mira continued speaking. She said she had stopped singing many years ago because she felt there was no point. She said life had beaten her down so many times that she had forgotten who she was. She said she had walked past this stage yesterday and something had stirred inside her. She said she did not know if she deserved to be here, but she knew she had to try. She had to know if her voice was still there, waiting for her dot when she finished speaking. the host announced that there were still more contestants to perform. The competition was not over yet, but everyone in the audience already knew what they had witnessed. They had seen something that would be remembered for years to come. They had seen a star being born from the ashes of a forgotten life. Mira walked off the stage in a daze. Backstage, the other contestants looked at her with new eyes. Priya, the young woman who had told Mira to leave earlier, walked up to her with tears in her eyes. She apologized for what she had said. She admitted that she had been wrong to judge Mira by her appearance. She said she had never heard anyone sing like that before, and she was honored to be competing on the same stage. Mira hugged Priya without saying a word. She had no anger toward her or anyone else who had mocked her. She understood why they had done it. In a world that valued appearance over substance, she had looked like nothing. She had looked like a failure, a loser, someone who did not matter. But she had proven that the outside of a person tells nothing about what is inside. The competition continued for another 2 hours. Many talented singers performed, some with voices that were technically perfect, others with styles that were unique and entertaining. But none of them could match what Mira had done. None of them could create the magic that she had created. The bar had been set too high. When all the performances were complete, the judges went into a private room to make their decision. The audience waited with growing tension. Television viewers across the country stayed glued to their screens, eager to know the result. On social media, Mira's performance was already going viral. People who had not even watched the show were sharing clips of her singing, calling it the most moving thing they had ever seen. After 30 minutes, the judges returned to their seats. The host walked onto the stage with an envelope in his hand. He told the audience that the decision had been unanimous. There had been no debate, no disagreement. All 3 judges had agreed on the winner without a moment of hesitation. The host opened the envelope slowly, building the tension. Then he smiled and spoke the name that everyone already knew in their hearts. The winner of Voice of Mumbai was Meera. The audience exploded with joy. People jumped up and down, screamed at the top of their lungs, and threw whatever they could find into the air. Mira walked back onto the stage, still not fully believing what was happening. The host handed her a large trophy and a check for a significant amount of money. Photographers crowded around her, their cameras flashing like lightning. Rekha Sharma came onto the stage and put a flower garland around Mira's neck. She announced that she wanted to sign Mira to her music label immediately. She said she would personally oversee Mira's career and make sure the world heard her voice. She promised that Mira would never have to sleep on the streets again, that her days of hunger and suffering were over. Mira held the trophy close to her chest and let the tears flow freely. She thought about her mother and father, wishing they could have been there to see this moment. She thought about all the people who had helped her along the way, the kind strangers who had given her food and water when she had nothing. She thought about the long journey that had brought her from a village in Rajasthan to this stage in Mumbai. After the ceremony, reporters surrounded Mira with their microphones and cameras. They asked her how it felt to win. They asked her what she planned to do next. They asked her what message she had for other people who were struggling in life. Mira answered each question with patience and humility. She told them that she felt grateful beyond words. She told them that she wanted to use her voice to help others who were suffering like she had suffered. She told them that her message was simple. She said everyone had a gift inside them, something that made them special. She said life could be hard and cruel, and it was easy to forget about that gift. But it was always there, waiting to be used. All a person had to do was find the courage to use it. Her words touched millions of hearts across the country. People who had been feeling hopeless found new strength in her story. People who had given up on their dreams started dreaming again. Mira had done more than win a singing competition. She had given people something they needed desperately. She had given them hope. That night, Mira slept in a hotel room for the first time in 15 years. The bed was soft and clean, the sheets smelled like flowers, and the air conditioning kept the room perfectly cool. She should have felt happy and comfortable, but she could not sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how quickly her life had changed. Just 24 hours ago, she had been a beggar with nothing but a steel bowl and a piece of cardboard. Now she was a celebrity with fans and contracts and money. It did not feel real. It felt like a dream that she would wake up from at any moment. She kept waiting for someone to come and tell her it was all a mistake, that she did not deserve any of this, but morning came and nobody told her that. Instead, she was greeted by Rekha Sharma and her team, ready to start working on her new career. There were meetings with music producers, sessions with vocal coaches, appointments with stylists and photographers. Her life was no longer her own. It belonged to the world that had suddenly fallen in love with her. Mira went through the motions, following instructions and signing papers, but inside she felt strangely empty. She had dreamed of this moment for so long, but now that it was here, she did not know how to feel. She had become so used to suffering that she did not know how to be happy. She had become so used to being alone that she did not know how to be surrounded by people. She missed the quiet nights by the gateway of India. She missed the sound of the waves and the sight of the stars. She missed the simplicity of having nothing, of wanting nothing, of expecting nothing. It was a strange feeling, and she did not know how to explain it to anyone. How could she tell these people that she was not sure if she wanted the life they were offering her? But she kept her doubts to herself and continued smiling for the cameras. She knew that millions of people were watching her, waiting to see what she would do next. She could not let them down. She could not waste the chance that God had given her. She had to be strong, even when she felt weak. She had to be brave, even when she felt scared, and so Mira took the first step into her new life, not knowing where it would lead her, but trusting that the same voice that had saved her once would guide her through whatever came next. 3 months passed since the day Mira won the Voice of Mumbai competition. In that short time, her life had transformed beyond recognition. She had moved from the streets into a beautiful apartment in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city. She had a wardrobe full of designer clothes, a team of assistants at her service, and a bank account with more money than she had ever imagined. Her first album was released to massive success. Critics called it a masterpiece of emotional depth and vocal brilliance. Songs from the album played on every radio station, in every shopping mall, in every rickshaw across India. Her face appeared on magazine covers and billboards. Television channels fought to interview her. Companies begged her to endorse their products. The beggar who had once been invisible was now one of the most famous faces in the country. But with fame came challenges that Mira had never expected. She was not just a singer anymore. She was a brand, a product, a public figure whose every move was watched and judged. The music industry was not the pure and beautiful world she had imagined. It was full of politics, jealousy, and people who pretended to be her friends while plotting behind her back. Some people in the industry resented her success. They whispered that she was just a gimmick, a sob story that would fade away once the novelty wore off. They said she had no real training, no formal education, no understanding of how the business worked. They waited for her to make a mistake so they could tear her down. Mira tried to ignore the negativity, but it was hard. She had spent so many years alone that she did not know how to handle the constant attention. Cameras followed her everywhere. Reporters wrote stories about her personal life, making up lies when they had no facts. Strangers on the internet criticized her appearance, her voice, her accent, her everything. The world that had lifted her up now seemed determined to break her down. The pressure started affecting her voice. During a concert in Delhi, Mira forgot the words to one of her songs. She stood on stage, frozen, as thousands of fans waited for her to continue. The moment lasted only a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity. She recovered and finished the song, but the damage was done. The media jumped on the incident, calling it proof that she was not ready for the big stage. That night, alone in her hotel room, Mira cried for hours. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She was wearing expensive makeup and designer jewelry, but behind all that, she could see the scared girl from the village, the lost woman from the streets. She wondered if she had made a mistake. She wondered if she should have stayed invisible. The next morning, Rekha Sharma came to visit her. The older woman could see the pain in Mira's eyes. She sat down next to her and held her hand. She told Mira that what she was feeling was normal. She said every artist goes through moments of doubt and fear. She said the key was to remember why she had started singing in the first place. Mira thought about the question. Why had she started singing? Not for fame or money or magazine covers. She had started singing because music was in her blood. She had started singing because her mother's songs were the only thing she had left of her family. She had started singing because when she opened her mouth and let the notes flow, she felt connected to something bigger than herself. Rekha told Mira to forget about the critics and the media. She told her to forget about the pressure and the expectations. She told her to close her eyes and sing like she had sung on that first day when she was just a beggar with nothing to lose. She told her to find that pure joy again, the joy that came from using the gift she had been given. Mira took Rekha's advice to heart. She started spending less time at parties and events and more time alone with her music. She went back to basics, practicing the simple songs her mother had taught her before moving on to more complex pieces. She stopped reading articles about herself and stopped caring about what people said on the internet. Slowly, her confidence returned. She started enjoying her performances again. She learned to connect with her audience in a real and meaningful way, not just singing at them but singing for them, sharing her story through every note and every word. Her concerts became known for their emotional power, leaving audiences in tears and standing ovations. But even as her career flourished, Mira never forgot where she came from. She started a foundation to help homeless people in Mumbai, providing them with food, shelter, and opportunities to rebuild their lives. She visited shelters and street corners, talking to people who reminded her of herself just a year ago. She told them her story and encouraged them to never give up hope. One day, while visiting a shelter for homeless women, Mira met a young girl named Aisha. The girl was only 14 years old, with sad eyes and a quiet voice. Like Mira, she had lost her parents and ended up on the streets. Like Mira, she had a love for music that she kept hidden inside her. Mira saw something special in Aisha. She saw a spark that reminded her of herself as a child. She decided to take the girl under her wing, paying for her education and her music lessons. She became like an older sister to Aisha, teaching her not just how to sing, but how to believe in herself. Aisha blossomed under Mira's care. Within months, her voice had developed into something beautiful and unique. She performed at small events organized by Mira's foundation, gaining confidence with each performance. Mira knew that one day, Aisha would become a star in her own right. The relationship with Aisha also helped Mira heal from her own past. By helping the girl, she was in a way helping the younger version of herself, the scared orphan who had been abandoned by the world. Every time she saw Aisha smile, she felt a piece of her broken heart becoming whole again. As the year came to an end, Mira was invited to perform at a special New Year's concert, the biggest music event of the year. The concert would be broadcast live across the world, with an expected audience of over 1 billion people. It would be the biggest performance of her life, and she was determined to make it unforgettable. But as she prepared for the concert, she received news that shook her to her core. A journalist had done some research into her past and had discovered something that Mira had tried to forget. The journalist had found her relatives, the ones who had treated her badly and forced her to run away. And they were now claiming that they had always supported Mira and deserved a share of her success. The story was published in a major newspaper, painting Mira as an ungrateful niece who had abandoned her loving family. Her relatives gave interviews, crying fake tears and telling lies about how they had raised her and cared for her. They said Mira had forgotten her roots and become arrogant with her success. Mira read the article with shaking hands. The pain of her childhood came flooding back. She remembered the beatings, the hunger, the nights spent locked in a dark room. She remembered running away in the middle of the night, terrified and alone. These people had never loved her. They had only used her and abused her. And now they wanted to use her again. For a moment, Mira felt the old darkness creeping back into her heart. She felt the urge to hide, to run away, to disappear like she had done before. But then she remembered something Rekha had told her. The past did not define her. What defined her was how she chose to move forward. Mira decided to tell her truth. She called a press conference and told the real story of her childhood. She told the reporters about the abuse, the neglect, the cruelty. She showed them the scars on her hands from years of hard labor. She spoke calmly but firmly, not seeking revenge but simply setting the record straight. The public response was overwhelming. People rallied behind Mira, condemning her relatives and praising her courage for speaking out. Her story inspired other survivors of abuse to share their own experiences. What her relatives had intended as an attack had instead made Mira stronger and more beloved than ever. With the controversy behind her, Mira threw herself into preparing for the New Year's concert. She worked harder than she had ever worked before, rehearsing for hours each day, perfecting every note, every movement, every emotion. This performance would not just be about music. It would be about showing the world that no matter how many times life knocked you down, you could always get back up. The night of the New Year's concert arrived with cold winter winds and clear skies. The venue was a massive outdoor stadium that could hold over 50,000 people, and every seat was filled. Giant screens displayed Mira's image as the crowd waited eagerly for the show to begin. Television crews from around the world had set up their cameras, ready to broadcast the performance to billions of viewers in every country. Backstage, Mira sat quietly in her dressing room, surrounded by flowers and good luck cards from fans and friends. Her makeup was perfect, her dress was stunning, her hair was beautifully styled. She looked like a queen, but inside, she felt like the same scared girl who had once slept on cardboard under the stars. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Aisha, the young girl she had taken under her wing. The teenager ran into the room and hugged Mira tightly. She told Mira how proud she was of her. She told her that she was watching from the front row and would be cheering louder than anyone else. Mira held the girl close and felt her nerves start to calm. After Isha left, Rekha Sharma came in. The older woman looked at Mira with eyes full of love and admiration. She told Mira that this night was the culmination of everything she had worked for. She told her to forget about the cameras and the crowd and the pressure. She told her to sing from her heart, just like she had always done. Mira nodded, took a deep breath, and stood up. It was time. The lights in the stadium dimmed as Mira walked toward the stage. The crowd fell silent with anticipation. A single spotlight shone on the empty stage, waiting for her to step into its glow. Mira's heart pounded in her chest, but her feet moved steadily forward. She had come too far to be afraid now. When she stepped onto the stage, the crowd erupted in applause. Thousands of voices cheered her name. Thousands of hands clapped together. Thousands of faces smiled up at her with love and admiration. Mira looked out at the sea of people and felt a wave of emotion wash over her. These people had accepted her. These people had believed in her. These people had given her a second chance at life. The music began, a soft melody that flowed through the speakers like a gentle river. Mira closed her eyes and let the sound fill her body. She thought about her journey, from the village in Rajasthan to the streets of Mumbai to this stage in front of the world. She thought about all the pain and all the joy, all the tears and all the laughter. She thought about everyone who had helped her and everyone who had hurt her. And then she began to sing. Her voice rose into the night sky like a bird set free from a cage. The notes were pure and powerful, each one carrying a piece of her soul. She sang about loss and longing, about darkness and light, about the power of hope in the face of despair. Her voice climbed higher and higher, reaching notes that seemed impossible, filling the stadium with a sound that made people forget to breathe. In the front row, Asha watched with tears streaming down her face. She had heard Mira sing many times before, but this was something different. This was Mira at her absolute best, giving everything she had to the music and the moment. Asha knew that she was witnessing history, a performance that would be talked about for generations to come. Across the world, billions of people watched on their television screens. In living rooms and bedrooms, in bars and restaurants, in hospitals and airports, people stopped what they were doing and listened. Many of them had never heard Mira before. Many of them did not know her story, but they could all feel the power of her voice, the emotion in every word, the beauty of what they were experiencing. Mira opened her eyes and looked at the crowd. She saw the tears on their faces, the joy in their eyes, the connection that had formed between her and them. She realized that this was why she had been given her gift. Not for fame or money or success. She had been given her voice so that she could touch people's hearts, so that she could make them feel something true and real, so that she could remind them that they were not alone in this world. The song built to its climax, Mira's voice soaring to heights that seemed to touch the stars themselves. The crowd held their breath, caught in the magic of the moment. And then, with a final note that seemed to hang in the air forever, the song came to an end. Silence followed, deep and complete. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the stadium exploded with the loudest applause Mira had ever heard. People jumped to their feet, screaming and crying and hugging each other. The sound was deafening, overwhelming, beautiful. It was the sound of 50,000 hearts breaking and healing at the same time. Mira bowed deeply, her own tears falling freely. She thanked the crowd in a voice that shook with emotion. She told them that this moment was not about her. It was about everyone who had ever been told they were not good enough. It was about everyone who had ever been laughed at or looked down upon. It was about everyone who had ever had a dream that seemed impossible. She told the crowd that 1 year ago, she had been a beggar on the streets with nothing but a torn piece of cardboard and a broken heart. She had been invisible, forgotten, lost, but she had never stopped believing that somewhere inside her was something special. And tonight, standing on this stage, she was proof that miracles were real. The crowd cheered even louder, if that was possible. Mira looked up at the sky and whispered a silent thank you to her parents, hoping that wherever they were, they could see what she had become. She wished they could be there to share this moment with her. She wished they could know that their little girl had not given up. After the concert, Mira was surrounded by well-wishers and media. Everyone wanted to talk to her, to congratulate her, to be near her. She smiled and thanked everyone, but her mind was somewhere else. She was thinking about the journey that had brought her here and the journey that still lay ahead. Later that night, when the crowds had gone home and the stadium was empty, Mira went back to the spot where she used to sleep near the gateway of India. She sat down on the ground, still wearing her beautiful concert dress, and looked out at the ocean. The waves crashed against the rocks, the same waves she had listened to for so many lonely nights. She thought about how different her life was now. She had everything she had ever wanted. She had success, respect, love, security. She had proven wrong everyone who had doubted her. She had shown the world that a beggar could become a queen, that a nobody could become a somebody, that the impossible could become possible. But sitting there on the cold ground, Mira felt something else too. She felt a deep sense of responsibility. She knew that her success was not just for herself. It was for all the people who were still struggling, still suffering, still invisible. It was for all the children who were growing up without parents, without homes, without hope. It was for all the voices that were still waiting to be heard. Mira made a promise to herself that night. She promised that she would never forget where she came from. She promised that she would use her fame and her fortune to help others who were less fortunate. She promised that she would be a voice for the voiceless, a light in the darkness, a reminder that every person had value and every life had meaning. The clock struck midnight, and fireworks lit up the sky above Mumbai. A new year had begun. Mira watched the colors burst and fade, each one more beautiful than the last. She smiled to herself, knowing that her story was far from over. This was not an ending. This was just the beginning. She stood up, brushed off her dress, and walked back toward the city. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to make a difference. But tonight she was content. Tonight she was at peace. Tonight she was exactly where she was supposed to be, and as she walked, she began to hum softly to herself, the same melody her mother had taught her so many years ago. The sound floated through the night air, mixing with the sounds of celebration all around her. Somewhere, In the vast ocean of the universe, Mira knew that her parents were watching, and she knew that they were proud. 5 years had passed since that magical New Year's concert. The world had changed in many ways, but Mira's voice remained as powerful and moving as ever. She had released 4 more albums, each one more successful than the last. She had performed in concert halls and stadiums across the globe, from London to New York, from Tokyo to Sydney. Her name was known in every corner of the planet, and her songs were sung by people of all ages and backgrounds. But more than her music, it was Mira's humanitarian work that had made the biggest impact. Her foundation had grown from a small organization to one of the most respected charities in India. It had helped thousands of homeless people get off the streets and rebuild their lives. It had built shelters and schools and hospitals in some of the poorest regions of the country. It had given hope to people who had been forgotten by society. Mira had also become a powerful advocate for children's rights. She traveled to villages and slums, meeting with young people who reminded her of herself at their age. She listened to their stories, held their hands, and told them that their lives mattered. She used her influence to push for laws that protected children from abuse and exploitation. She became a symbol of what was possible when one person decided to make a difference. Usha, the young girl Mira had rescued from the streets, had grown into a talented singer in her own right. She had released her first album at age 18, with Mira as her mentor and producer. The album had been a modest success, but more importantly, it had proven that Usha had the talent and determination to build her own career. Mira watched the young woman with pride. Knowing that she had helped break the cycle of poverty and despair on the 5th anniversary of Mira's New Year's concert, a special event was organized in her honor. It was a tribute show featuring performances by some of the biggest names in the music industry, all coming together to celebrate Mira's achievements. The venue was the same stadium where she had given that legendary performance, and once again every seat was filled. Mira sat in the audience this time, watching as singer after singer took the stage to honor her. They performed her songs, shared their memories of working with her, and expressed their admiration for her talent and her character. Many of them had been inspired by her story to pursue their own dreams. Many of them credited her with changing the way the industry thought about talent and success. When it was finally Mira's turn to speak, she walked onto the stage to a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. The audience would not stop clapping, would not stop cheering, would not stop showing their love. Mira stood there, taking it all in, remembering the day when she had been afraid that no one would want to hear her sing. She raised her hand and the crowd slowly quieted down. She thanked everyone for coming, thanked the organizers for putting together such a beautiful event, thanked the performers for their generous tributes. But then she said she wanted to share something that she had never shared publicly before. Mira told the audience that 5 years ago, on the night before the singing competition, she had almost given up. She had been lying on her cardboard bed, looking at the stars, thinking about ending her life. She had been tired of suffering, tired of being hungry, tired of being alone. She had thought that the world would be better off without her. The audience gasped in shock. They had never heard this part of her story. Mira continued, her voice steady but filled with emotion. She said that what had stopped her was a memory of her mother. She remembered her mother telling her that every person was born with a purpose, and that running away from life was the same as running away from that purpose. She remembered her mother's voice, gentle and loving, telling her to be strong. Mira said that she had decided to give life one more chance. She had decided to enter the competition and sing one last song. If it went badly, she would know that she had tried. If it went well, maybe something good would come of it. She had not expected to win. She had not expected to become famous. She had simply expected to sing and see what happened. She looked out at the sea of faces and told them that her story could have ended very differently. If she had given up that night, she would never have been standing on this stage. She would never have touched the lives of millions of people. She would never have helped all the children and families that her foundation had served. She would have become just another forgotten soul, lost to the darkness. Mira said that she was sharing this because she knew there were people watching who felt the same way she had felt that night. She knew there were people who were thinking about giving up, who believed that their lives did not matter, who could not see any hope for the future. She wanted those people to know that they were not alone. She wanted them to know that things could change in ways they could not imagine. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke directly to those struggling souls. She told them that their lives had value. She told them that their pain was not permanent. She told them that somewhere inside them was a gift, a purpose, a reason to keep going. She told them that all they had to do was hold on for one more day, and then one more day after that, until the light finally broke through the darkness. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. Many people were crying openly, moved by the raw honesty of what they were hearing. Mira's words were not just about her own journey. They were about the universal human experience of suffering and survival, of despair and hope. Mera announced that she had one more surprise for the evening. She called Usha to the stage, and the young woman walked out with a shy smile on her face. Mira put her arm around Usha and told the audience that this was her legacy. This was what she was most proud of. Not the awards or the albums or the sold-out concerts. This young woman, who had been homeless and hopeless just a few years ago, was now a successful artist with a bright future ahead of her. Mira announced that she and Usha would perform a duet together, a song they had written together about their shared journey from darkness into light. The music began, and the two voices blended together in perfect harmony. Mira's powerful tones mixed with Usha's youthful energy, creating something new and beautiful. The song told the story of two souls who had found each other in the chaos of the world, who had healed each other's wounds, who had proven that love and kindness could conquer even the deepest pain. When the song ended, the applause was thunderous. Mira and Usha stood hand in hand, bowing to the audience, tears streaming down both their faces. This was what it had all been for. This was the meaning of everything Mira had experienced. Not the suffering, but what she had done with it. Not the pain, but how she had transformed it into something beautiful. After the show, Mira went home to her apartment. She stood on her balcony, looking out at the lights of Mumbai. The city that had once treated her as invisible now glowed beneath her like a sea of diamonds. She thought about her mother and father, about her village, about all the years of wandering and struggling. She thought about the competition that had changed everything, about the judges who had believed in her, about the fans who had supported her. She realized that her story was not really about her at all. It was about the power of the human spirit to survive against all odds. It was about the importance of never giving up, no matter how dark things seemed. It was about the truth that every person, no matter how broken or lost, had something valuable to offer the world. Mira smiled and began to hum softly. The melody was the same one she had sung on that first day, the bhajan her mother had taught her so long ago. The notes floated out into the night, mixing with the sounds of the city, touching the hearts of anyone who happened to hear them. Somewhere out there, another lost soul was listening. Another beggar with a hidden gift was wondering if there was any point in going on. Another child was dreaming of a better life. And Mira's voice, carried on the wind, was telling them all the same thing. It was telling them to hold on. It was telling them to believe. It was telling them that miracles were real, and that one day their time would come too. The beggar who had asked if she could sing for the people had gotten her answer. The world had not only let her sing, the world had listened. And in listening, the world had been changed forever.